Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining this week's panel conversation. I'm really excited about this conversation this week. We have three leaders in law enforcement that are going to be sharing their perspectives and their approaches towards building stronger engagement in their communities. It's such an important time to be having these kind of conversations simply because of all the things that are going on in the world, from the pandemic to civil unrest to all of the political divisiveness. So much of that is impacting law enforcement agencies across our country. And so having these conversations, I think, is a really important thing to be doing. And I'm just excited about having these particular leaders participating in the conversation today. My name is Matt Fulton. I'm the Vice President for National Engagement for a company called Polco. We work with communities around engagement and tracking performance from a resident's perspective. But the intent of these meetings is really to just help share ideas and things that are working so that you can benefit it. We hope that you bring up or that you identify or pick up a new perspective, a new solution, a new approach, something that you can use in your own worlds, in the things that you're doing. Here's the way that the day is going to proceed. I'll do a quick introduction of our panelists, and then we will introduce the topic and get into the conversation. I have three questions that I'll be asking each of the panelists, and then we'll wrap it up with any questions that they might have with each other. And generally, the process takes about an hour. And I'm just excited and thankful that you're taking a look at this session and hopefully benefiting from the conversation. So let me go ahead and make some introductions. The first person I'd like to introduce is Chief Brian Mueller. Brian was appointed as the Chief of Police in Stillwater, Minnesota in January of 2021. Although he's got 23 years of experience in law enforcement. He was also served as the Chief Deputy in Washington County Sheriff's Department and also spent some time with the White Bear Lake, Minnesota Police Department before Washington County. He's the current president of the Special Operations Training Association of Minnesota and treasurer for the Lake Center for Youth and Family in Forest Lake. And he's a past chair of the Minnesota Violent Crimes Coordinating Council. He's also a member of the National Sheriff's Association, the National Association of Chiefs of Police, the Minnesota Association, and the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association. Brian, thank you. I hope your new job is going well in Stillwater. It's just a wonderful community. I would love to have you just add a little bit more color to your background if you're willing.
Yeah, thank you. Just Matt, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, especially with Terry and Andre. I know they have great careers already, and look forward to having a great discussion. Yeah, you kind of nailed just the guts of my career. It's a little bit different, coming at a short stint with the city of White Bear Lake and some internships in Minneapolis. And so wearing blue and then going for the majority of my career wearing a brown uniform, just a different perspective when you're looking at jail and comm center and court security. But as a chief deputy there, able to run the day-to-day operations and really be involved in our patrol ops, our special operations team. Narcotics and investigations are kind of the background where I come from. This opportunity came about. I wasn't searching for a chief's job at all, but it's a community I live in. My family works here, goes to school here, that kind of stuff, and it's just an awesome community. So I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring and see if I could get this job. I was, fortunate enough to do that and honored, and I'm having a blast. As the chiefs probably know, it's a little bit different. The municipality, I'm able to connect just on a different level than we could on that broad perspective with the sheriff's office. So yeah, that's just really cool. So I'm excited.
Chief, I just got to say, you are in a very unique historic community, very cool environment. When you got the job, a lot of my colleagues that I was in conversations were really happy that you got that position just because of the reputation that you have and the way you've built up your career. So I'm really happy and excited for you to be part of this conversation. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt.
I'm really happy to introduce Chief Andre Sayles, who was sworn in as Beloit's 19th police chief in April of this year. And he's been with the department since 2005. He has an extensive background in community policing and even instructs police relations, report writing, and interview techniques at Madison College. Andre is a graduate of the Wisconsin Command College with leadership in police organizations and is the second vice president of the Wisconsin Law Enforcement's Executive Development Association. He's also a member of the Wisconsin Chiefs of Police and National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. the IACP, and the Police Executive Research Forum. So he's very involved within the profession. While serving as Sergeant of Patrol, he was awarded the City of Beloit's Hometown Hero Award for his efforts in community collaboration. So I'm excited to hear more about all of the collaborative work that he's doing. He's a member of the Rock County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council and its evidence-based decision-making team, as well as very involved in Beloit community and working with the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, Family Services. Chief, you're very engaged and very involved. I really appreciate you taking some time to share your perspectives and approaches, but would love it if you could just add a little bit more to your background.
Well, my background, I started off after I graduated college as a juvenile probation officer in Winnebago County, Illinois. I found so much joy in doing that and reaching out to our younger community members that I said, how can I reach the older individuals and also at the same time have involvement with our young ones? So I decided to become a police officer. I put in applications, probably roughly 20 places. I said the first place that bites is the place I'm going to go. Beloit was the first one. After that, several others tried to steer me away from Beloit, but I figured Beloit gave me the opportunity to be a police officer here. Why not continue to hone my skills and have a career here at Beloit Police Department? So once I became a police officer here at Beloit, I worked my way up to the drug and gang unit, where I did a little bit of undercover stuff and working on our drugs and gang problem here in the city of Beloit. I found great joy in that. But at the same time, though, it was very disheartening, always going into a house and having to take a family member or loved one away from younger kids. And that kind of tugged on my heart a little bit. And I always said, instead of always kicking in doors, let me take the administrative route to see how we can better collaborate with our community members. I took it upon myself to be truly involved in the community to the point to where if I had my old iWatch, it would show that I probably used to walk 8 to 9 miles a day during foot patrol in communities, just being out of that squad car, having that connection, that first name basis connection with our community members. So that's something that we're implementing here at the Beloit Police Department, getting out of the squad cars with the windows rolled up and the air conditioner going, and going out and making those positive connections with our community members here in the city of Beloit.
I have to compliment you with your long tenure in the community. As we were talking a little bit before the session, I have family in Beloit, and so the times that I get to Beloit, you can just feel the change in the dynamics and in the environment. And I'm sure that it is in part due to the work that you're doing and the long-term kind of energies that you and the department are extending into the community. So congratulations on that. I see a lot of positive things going on in Beloit, and I'm really happy that you're spending some time with us just to kind of share with others what's working for you, so that others can benefit from all of that. So thanks, Chief. Really appreciate being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Let me introduce our third panelist. Chief Terry Stier began his police career back in 2003, working part-time with the Plaine Police Department in Minnesota. He started as a part-time, and he worked his way all the way up through the ranks to his appointment to police chief. So congratulations, Terry. It's really nice. It's a great career story of growing up and working your way to the top position. So congratulations. In early 2020, he was moved to an emergency management role, which means he's now overseeing both the police and fire departments. Over the course of his career, Chief Stier has also worked part-time with the Scott County Sheriff's Department and as a recreational safety deputy for the past little more than a decade. He also found time to work part-time for the University of Minnesota and the Three Rivers Park District as a police officer. So Terry is a very busy guy. He was recently elected to the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association on their board of directors, and is really taking advantage of that. He's helped develop a peer resource network to connect chiefs across the state. And he's in the process of developing a refurbished mentorship program for the association. Being from Plaine, Terry mentions that he has been able to be in this unique position to build those bonds through trusted relationships that he's built in the community. One of the really cool things that he shared with me in preparation is he started a nonprofit group called Project Safe Neighborhood, and has donated a portion of his paycheck every week just to help local families in need in the community. It's just a very cool story, Chief, and Thank you for spending some time with us today, and I'd love it if you would add a little bit more to your background.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Matt. So I started my career in 2003 as a part-time officer and worked my way up the ranks. And in 2019, our chief went out on PTSD. So I was thrown into the rank of interim chief and running the investigations unit, patrol unit, and learning how to be a chief. And when I first started as chief, I really had no idea what a chief was supposed to do. I reached out to a lot of people, and I had a lot of good chiefs, a lot of helpful chiefs that were there and, walked to me and guide me through to where I am today. I still don't know everything there is to know about being a chief, but one thing I do know is how to connect with the community. I was born and raised in the city of Plaine. I know a good majority of people that live here, and I am like Chief Andre. When I get out of my car, I walk around, I'm in businesses, I meet with people on a daily basis from all ranks across, from low income to middle income to high income. I can relate to just about everybody. And when COVID hit, it was the local bars, the local restaurants. It was trying to get people to go to get takeout from the local restaurants and getting that message out there that we got to support our local businesses. And I think that helped a lot with growing up here and building the bridge between people that didn't know that, our local bars had takeout. So I would meet with people and we would put out menus on our Facebook page and do anything we can to connect the community. National Night Out this year was a huge success. We had multiple events across the city, and I got to talk to people at the event and then after the event. I would meet with people for coffee. This morning I met with a local group of, I like to call them our group that decides what happens in the city. A bunch of older gentlemen that get together for coffee every Tuesday morning, and they can fix the world's problems. So today I listened to their concerns and we worked through a couple of them, and that's what I like to do. I think that's what our chief's responsibility is, connecting the community and just being out there.
That's great. I mean, all three of you are bringing in a long time commitment to either your immediate community or your immediate community and surrounding area. This is going to be a great conversation. Chief, thank you for spending some time and being part of this. So let's jump into it. The topic of the conversation today is putting police needs and expectations into a community context. I shared with you that I was a city manager for, over 30 years. And my experience has been that the importance of law enforcement in every aspect of community life is just a critical aspect of building community. It's not just about the public safety aspect, but it's also the way that you handle yourself in the community and engage with folks and build those relationships so that people feel like they're part of the community. And we all know what a sense of community really means. And every community wants to build in that. And I think law enforcement plays such a critical role in that process. But the reality is, it also means that when mistakes happen or when issues come up, where the community gets up in arms about something that's going on in the community, it can have generational impacts. And so having those connections in a meaningful and authentic way that have been built up over time becomes such a critical part. And the engagement part that law enforcement departments play in that process is such a critical thing that can't be taken for granted. We have a benchmark survey that we use and are getting a lot of interest from law enforcement agencies across the country, and it's called the National Law Enforcement Survey, LEL, and the National Law Enforcement Survey. It's an NALS, and I put on the chart here one of the slides, one of the findings that we took out from administering a national this tool nationally in 2018, kind of pre-George Floyd, and then 2020 post-George Floyd. And the question really surrounds what are resident priorities in public safety? School safety and security remains the highest priority in the country on things that are impacting communities and what residents really raise to the top in terms of their perspectives. And you can see the differences in the chart as you go down the list of things that they consider to be high priorities. The two areas that I want to point out, though, that actually increased over the last couple of years is the importance of increasing connectedness with the community and increasing the residents' accessibility to police. And that's kind of the basis of this conversation today is how are you able to address these two priorities that are clearly coming through and are a higher priority need from residents based on all of the things that have happened over the last couple of years. With all of the things that are going on in the world and all of the challenges around engagement, this conversation is really about how can you engage with residents, particularly those marginalized populations or those that are just simply harder to connect with. Love to hear those stories and get into the conversations. So there's three questions that I want to pose to each of you. The first one is, what role should the community play in guiding and influencing the delivery of police services? I've had a lot of police chiefs say that once you understand what the issues are, how do you manage those expectations? Because it's just as critical to acknowledge that you can't accomplish everything overnight. So what do you do to manage community expectations? And then just the question about what tools are you using? What methods are you using for getting that resident input and understanding what the priorities are? And how are you tracking your performance in the department? It's just a really important thing, particularly with all the community noise that's going on. How can you accurately identify your performance so that you can share that with the community and build that trust and that faith in the work that you're doing? So with that, let's just go ahead and jump into the questions. And Chief Mueller, I'd like to start with you. Can you talk about the role that the community plays in being and influencing the delivery of police services in Stillwater?
I always laugh at people when that happens. And now here it is, the first question, I did that. All right, we got it out of the way. What I was saying is interesting on that slide that you showed with the stats. So the smallest increase was actually those two areas that you pointed out. That was the smallest increase from 18 to 20. But I wonder if those were also the highest points, that they were the highest expectations. So you saw drug enforcement increase, school enforcement increase, traffic enforcement, neighborhood nuisances. Those increased the most, but the community piece did not increase as significantly. However, they were the two highest to start with. So I wonder if that's why. In Stillwater, it's interesting. So new to this gig. And so I'm trying to take a lot of what Terry's doing. And it's listening and getting out with the community and finding out what they want. To that question, community is essential and they should guide the expectations of the police department and what they find or what they feel is important. And then it's our job to educate them on, our actual abilities and our, the statutes that guide us and some of the practicalities of law enforcement and police work. And so for me early on, we have an interesting community, not just in the very little bit that I looked at, Chief Andre, is a little bit, River City, kind of like Beloit, and we have kind of three distinct areas. We have up on the hill, a residential area. We have our downtown district, which is quickly becoming a focal point of the state in terms of tourism. And then we have sort of this commercial corridor that leads into some of our, like the high school over in Oak Park Heights. And so managing those three distinct areas, we have a large voice that says, hey, let's manage the tourism. Let's make that safe. That's where your focus should be. And then the people that are living up on the hill are saying, hey, we live here, our kids play here. You need to manage that. We have schools in our communities. That's what our focus is. And then the other people saying, I want business coming in here. We need safe highways, take care of our commercial districts. So managing those three areas is what I've been spending a lot of time just listening. So it's been since January, and it's just been a lot of listening, not a lot of telling. The only change I've made immediately, and normally I would wait 9 to 12 months to make any wholesale changes in any new area of responsibility I've had. But I felt the need to have just what both the chiefs talked about. And I love hearing that they're doing it, because I'm going to start talking to my command staff and say, I'm not the only one, is a foot patrol, a downtown precinct focused on that area, because we're a 20,000 person city that acts like 40,000 person city on any given day. And in large events, maybe 100,000 person city. And so we need a large presence downtown. We just didn't have that before. So just kind of following what the guy said, is I'm really trying to increase our presence in those areas, being visible, out of the car, talking, and engaged in that area. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but the community is integral, and that's why I'm just kind of in a listening mode right now. No,
that's great. I really appreciate it. And I thought I knew the community, and I recognized two of them, not the third. But do you find it challenging to balance out the needs of listening to the business community the residential community, and then of course everybody else is coming into the community?
Yeah, no, that is difficult. The way that I've tried to do that is we have, what we call the valley here. So really the Lower St. Croix Valley, we're talking about, or not the Lower St. Croix Valley, that's from my Washington County days, the St. Croix Valley. So we have Chief Eastman in Bayport. I have a police department there in that city. Chief Steve Hansen over in Oak Park Heights. And so what I'm trying to do with our community is these three small communities kind of blend together. Stillwater High School is in the city of Oak Park Heights. And so what I'm trying to say to the community is we can do all of it together, and let's not draw the borders. And so we all live, work, and play here. We have residents that drive in and out. Our kids are driving through our larger community. And so I'm trying to frame Stillwater as opposed to just being Stillwater proper into this valley area. And I'm getting a little bit of steam on that. People are resonating with that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's got to be a collaborative approach that goes beyond your boundaries. So yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Sayles, can you talk about the role that the community plays in guiding and influencing the delivery of police services in Beloit?
I think one of the biggest things here in Beloit is we've been very fortunate to have a great community that understands us and wants to be involved with us. And we've taken that and we've created our courageous community conversations. So every quarter, myself and the command staff, we go out and we either have one on the east side of the city or the west side of the city, and we have courageous conversations with our community members. We truly want to hear from our community members of what's going on in their neighborhoods. I don't live on every street in the city of Beloit, so I'm not there 24 hours, 7 days a week. So we want to hear what's going on when we're not around. We take that information and we try to implement new strategies with our patrol officers, our violent crimes interdiction team, and our detectives to take care of those concerns that our community members bring up to us. And I think it's been a great thing that we've created because we've had a lot more community members engage with us during some of our homicide investigations, some of our shot fired complaints, and they've been really engaging with letting us know who did it. And I think that's a testament to our community policing that we've implemented and showing them that we're truly here for them. Also, while having these community conversations, we talk to them about some of the things that the 21st Century Policing Task Force came up with, that procedural justice, understanding that they have a voice in some of the things that's going on, listening to them before we're making the critical decision to arrest people sometimes, because sometimes we go to calls and our mind is already made up of who's going to get arrested just based off the situation we're going to. Understanding that a male can be a victim of domestic abuse, and it's not always the male that's a suspect. So having that procedural justice, letting them know that we're truly going to listen to them, we're going to understand what's going on before we make that critical incident, because we're not just affecting that person that we're arresting, we're affecting their entire family, their entire neighborhood. Is he or she the only person working in that family? Is there any other options that we can come up with to assure that this family stays intact with each other? And it's also trying to change the culture of our policing department. For very too long, I feel that police departments stayed within the four walls of their confines, and they really didn't want to go out and have that transparency and that procedural justice with the community members, because let's face it, we're always attacked in media outlets, and we just said, you know what, we're not going to do this. And it's breaking down those walls, creating a new culture within policing to understand, like Sir Robert Peel said, the people are the police are the people, and having that connection with each other. So therefore we can understand what's going on when we're not around, and we can understand who lives in this neighborhood and who should be in this neighborhood. So those are some of the things that we've done. One thing that we're creating, I've only been in the chief position for 5 months, but I've been here for 16 and a half years. One thing that we're going to create is neighborhood teams. Therefore, we can have 2 officers and a supervisor that understands the east side of Beloit, and they'll bring those issues and concerns to the table when they meet with our 2 officers and a sergeant that oversees our west side. So therefore, we can look at the issues that's going on in our city and try to make a whole Beloit. One of the hashtags we're going to create is One Beloit. And so therefore we all have the same voice. We all understand what's going on in Beloit, and we're all working together to have a holistic approach with all of this.
That's great. How many neighborhoods does Beloit have?
We have multiple neighborhoods. Our main ones are Merrill neighborhood and the Hackett neighborhood, and that's basically our east and west side. The population of Beloit is about 37,000. But if you look at some of our statistical crime stats, we deal with big city crime. It's unfortunate that right now 2021, we're at 4 homicides already, and we still got a long way to go. 1 homicide is too much. So we're really trying to get involved with our communities to understand what's going on more. COVID messed up a lot of things. We used to do Wednesdays in the parks where we would meet with a local custard and ice cream shop, and we would just pop up at a park. And we put it on our Facebook page and say, hey, 6 o'clock to 7:30, we're going to be at Brown Hatchet Park with ice cream. And we would get 30 to 40 families out there conversing with each other, talking to each other, and understanding who your neighbor is. When I go on vacation, my neighbors come up to me and say, hey, would you like me to watch your house? And I just seen in Beloit, we really didn't have that. And with those ice cream socials, I'll call it, we created that back. But with this nasty pandemic, it kind of pulled us back from that. But we're getting back to that slowly.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's super. It's really kind of funny to hear those stories about how you pull those families. Just quickly, how many people do you generally get out for one of your courageous conversations, which I think is a great way to engage?
Normally we probably get about 25 to 30. So what I do is I like to challenge people sometimes. I played collegiate basketball, and I always tell people, if I wanted people in the stands, I always brought another friend with me. So I always challenge our older population to grab a person in between the ages of 18 and 28 and bring them to the next meeting. And I can say our last meeting that we had in July, we had 64 people that showed up. And wow. A lot of our older people actually brought the younger population with them. So it was great to see. Obviously, that's working for us. Just challenging people to come out and have that voice. And I think once we've shown that we're truly here to listen to them, a lot more people have been receptive to come in and talk with us.
That's just super. Yeah, congratulations on that. It's great to hear those kind of numbers for those neighborhood conversations, especially being multi-generational. Super. Yeah. Chief Stier, can you share with us the role that the community plays in guiding and influencing police services in Belle Plaine? Sure.
So when I was in investigations, one of the biggest things for me was our clearance rate. And people probably don't understand the clearance rate, but I had a goal of when I took over that I would maintain an 80% clearance rate of all of our cases that come in from, we had a homicide, we've had everything down to a mailbox vandalism or a fraud call. So when somebody comes into our office and wants to file a report, to that person, it is the most important thing that has ever happened to them, that their mailbox was damaged or their flower pot was destroyed by a juvenile. And I stress to the officers that in that person's mind, that is the most serious thing that has ever happened to them, maybe losing a mailbox or if somebody stole their mail. It is our job to go after that, find the person, or at least do everything we can possibly do to try and solve the case. And I think that has helped a lot when we can go and say, yes, we did find the juvenile that broke your flower pot, or we found the person that stole your mail. Solving those cases builds that bond with the community to say, we are working for you and we do work for the people. And like Chief Andre said, I mean, it's our job to be out there and we are to solve these crimes. And we meet with community members all the time with Coffee with the Cop. COVID really struck us hard with that. We lost the bond of Coffee with the Cop with our elderly population in our retirement homes. We would meet there once a month and meet with them and discuss their concerns and kind of put them at ease that we're here. And we would walk through their buildings and all of that it hit the brakes. We couldn't do it. So we tried phone calls. We had a vulnerable adult checklist. If anybody in town was vulnerable living alone, we would have officers go by wearing gloves and a mask, and they would knock on the door and, do you need anything from us? And we had several adults that we would check on. We also have a house watch. If you're going on vacation for a week and you want us to watch your house, we have you fill out a house watch form. Our officers will drive by, log the date and time that they drove by the house, and make sure that the doors are locked and the lights are on that are supposed to be on. And if there's anything suspicious, we'll call, and we have a key holder that we have listed as well. So it's little programs like that are time consuming to patrol, but they mean a lot to the public. And I'm a working chief, not that Chief Brian or Andre are not, but I do work mid shifts and dog shifts, overnight shifts. I just worked a Friday night overnight shift because we needed coverage. And when I was on the call, I showed up and a guy bought me a coffee at 2:00 in the morning and asked how I drew the short straw. And I said, I really like this stuff. You know, I really like driving around. I like going to calls. And it's that seeing the chief out at 2:00 in the morning and seeing that population, the bar crowd leaving, walking through the bars at 1:30 and saying hi to everybody. It's just not something they're used to, but I'm out there. They know if they have a question, they can talk to me. So, and I think that's I grew up in this town, so a lot of people know me, and I can build that of, hey, your cops are doing this, or hey, your cops are doing that. Well, we're not chalking your tires at the bars. You know, we're not laying and waiting for people to leave the bars. I can assure you that. So it's just calming the questions that come up. And I think just being out there, being able, and if I'm on the street corner in Plaine, I'll have somebody come up and talk to me. And that's what it's about. Express your concerns. Let's work this out. And there are some concerns that I'm never going to fix. I just know it. I mean, it's some people argue to argue, and I'm sorry, but I can't help you. But for the most part, people are genuine. And if they bring a complaint to me, I will fix it if I can. If our officers are being too hard on traffic enforcement, well, maybe there's an issue with traffic. And it's just explaining that to people. The concerns that I get in the office, the questions, the comments, it's, we get a complaint, we handle the complaint, and we stay on it until it's fixed. So I think the community does play a big role in what we do. And right now, I don't think that heavy traffic enforcement is what we need to do. I think we need to be out there in parks. We need to be saying hi to kids, walking through schools, walking through the bars at 1:00 at night, walking down the streets and talking to people. What are your concerns? Are you scared? Are you safe? That's what we're here for. So,
You know what? First of all, thanks for your leadership. I don't know where you get all your time. You are a very busy chief. During these panel conversations, you brought up something that I hear repetitively, and that is all of the little touches that you're doing in your community to build community. And I think that as you start to think about this thing that we call sense of community, it's those kinds of efforts. And they're not big things, but they're just small, attentive things to your community that I think is having an impact. I mean, Plaine has always had such a positive reputation. And my perspective of Plaine is just an outstanding community, but it's probably because of some of the work that you're doing in creating that atmosphere. So it's really great to hear how you've engaged with your community, and looking forward to learning a little bit more about it. Let's go on to the second question. Chief Sayles, can you talk about the strategies that your community is using for managing community expectations?
So one of the biggest things that we're going to start doing is sending out surveys to our community members here in Beloit. Because once again, everybody can't make it to the courageous conversations. There's people that work the second shift hours. There's people that work the third shift hours. There's families that are working multiple jobs to assure that they can survive in today's society and with the economic status that they have. So one of the biggest things that we're going to start doing is sending out community flyers and surveys to assure that we are being guardians. You go back to the 21st century policing, it says, changing that mindset from that warrior mindset to that guardian mindset. But at the same time, though, not forgetting that there's going to be that time that we're going to have to be the warriors. And that's one thing that we implemented at Beloit is put on our squad cars, the guardian mindset with a lot of things that we're doing, making sure that we're protecting the dignity of all human rights. And we want to make sure that we're doing that. And how can we do that? Make sure we're sending out these surveys and trying to get, I would love to get 80% of them back when we do this in 2022, just to make sure we're on the right path. Because once again, we are here to protect and serve. So those are some of the things we're doing. Once again, our courageous conversations, meeting face to face with people. I want to see the facial expressions. One of the things that people always looked a little side eye at me was I would always introduce myself by my first name first. Didn't matter what position I held, officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and now chief. I would say, hey, how you doing? My name's Andre. What's your name? And people are like, What? Hey, I'm a human just like you. I happen to wear a uniform on a daily basis, but that allowed people to relax a little and to have those open conversations with us. We're very active on our social media page. We have one of our sergeants, Sergeant Ryan Flanagan, does an excellent job in engaging with our community members. We get so many messages in regards to things that are occurring in the city, all the way from our homicide investigations, all the way down to the crossing walks at schools. So those are some of the tools that we're using to better engage with them, to have the understanding, to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do as guardians of Beloit.
Well, and it also strikes me that the work that you're doing, like with your courageous conversations, you're helping people to appreciate the challenges that the department has, so that you can't accomplish everything overnight. So it does help with kind of alleviating those expectations for immediate response.
Yeah, and another thing is we want to create a citizens police academy, because I think a lot of times with TV shows, I think people have unrealistic expectations of what we can do. It may happen sometime, but it's an anomaly. I don't really see a homicide investigation taking 47 minutes to complete. So truly putting them through police academy and letting them know the steps that we have to go through, why we don't release victim names, why I don't release the name of the deceased individual. So therefore they have that better understanding. And if we pass on that common knowledge, guess what? They're going to touch everybody in their household. And we somehow touched 6 people in one house, and then they're going to go out and put that same message out, and we're going to get more people that want to come through our Citizens Police Academy, so everybody knows what it takes to be a police officer, what we have to go through on a daily basis, the laws that we have to follow, and how we're trying to follow these laws to protect them.
Yeah, that's outstanding. That's great stuff. Yeah, congratulations. Chief Stier, can you talk about the strategies that you're using in Belle Plaine for helping to manage community expectations?
Sure. I just want to start off by, Chief, if that logo on the back of the squads, I'd like to see how that goes in the community. If that there's negative or positive, can you somehow get my email and let me know?
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
Perfect. All right. Sorry, I had to get that out there. So what I do in the community is I like to be honest with everybody that I deal with. If there's something that I can do or can't do, I'm blatantly honest. I'm known as a black and white chief. It's, if I can do it, I'll do it. If I can't, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's an absolute no. The community expects us to do a lot of things, and right now they love us and hate us. And in the community that I work in, I would say that a majority actually like the police department and they enjoy what we do. And there's some that just absolutely hate us. And that I don't understand. A quick story is when Minneapolis was going through their civil unrest, our officers were in Minneapolis, and I ran back and forth between our division here and the officers that we had up there. And it was a completely different mindset. I would go into Minneapolis, and the names that our officers were being called and the way that we were being treated up there was, it was inhumane to have us standing on the line. And then I would turn around and come back to Belle Plaine, walk into Quick Trip, and someone would buy me coffee. And they would say, "Thank God you're here. Thank God you're here." And that's the smaller community that I work in. We have 7,000 people here, and we would run back and forth, and the officers would go and they'd come back and they'd sleep for 4 or 5 hours and come back. And I just said on some of the calls that we would go to, our officers were a little short with the citizens. And it was, you have to understand that we're doing everything we can possibly do. We're going up and we're dealing with this and we're coming back. And I'm sorry that, you had this happen to you, but the officers are stressed, and that's not an excuse, but this is where we're at. So managing the community expectations is, we can't be everywhere, and our city knows that. It's just, if a house is burglarized in the middle of the night, I take that personally. That's one of our citizens that had their house burglarized. We need to go after that. And why weren't we in the neighborhood? Well, we have a big city to patrol, and there's only 2 officers that are working at night. So we can't do everything. And if we stop the wrong car, we're racially profiling. If we, we stop a plate in the middle of the night that it comes out of Minneapolis. Why are you in our community? Why are you driving through this area? If we stop that car just based on that, that's racial profiling. We can't do it. So I try and explain that to the community. It's just, I can't stop every car that drives into town because they're not from here. It just doesn't work that way. We have to have a reason. We had a incident involving a homicide suspect from Lakeville that came to Plaine. It was a situational thing. His ex-girlfriend had just moved in to an apartment building in town, and everybody said, "Oh my God, it's coming here, it's coming here." It's a situational thing. She moved here to feel safe. As soon as he got here, we were on him, we arrested him, it was over. But still, it's, oh my God, a homicide suspect was in town. I can't stop that. I can't put barriers on the edge of town to say, if you're a homicide suspect, you can't come in, but they expect us to do that. The expectations are sometimes so high that we can't meet them. So we just do everything we can, and it's just being honest with people. You can't lie, you can't sugarcoat to the public. They know, they're going to see through it. It's just be honest, tell the truth. This is what happened, and this is what we did.
Yeah, that's very well said. It just strikes me that given your presence in the community and the way that you lead the department, that honesty aspect is probably your best asset, because people are going to always be throwing stuff at you, but just by being honest and transparent, that's the way you're effectively able to help people to understand what you can and can't do. So I totally appreciate that. Thank you. Chief Mueller, can you talk about strategies that you're using in Stillwater for managing community expectations?
Yeah, hesitate to just regurgitate what both the chief said, but in a combination, here's what I'm trying to do, and that's being present and what Chief Andre's talking about, and having those meetings. So it's for us, it's for so long there has not been a police presence in Stillwater, good, bad, or indifferent. And right now it's such an interesting time because the community it's bifurcated in a way that they want police presence. Violent crime is skyrocketing, traffic deaths are skyrocketing. And so we have a lot of these issues in our communities, and they need the police. We want the police to take care of that. On the flip side, people are concerned at times about police presence and what's happened around the country. So the honesty that Chief Stier is talking about is crucial and critical. And to be able to stand in front of a group, an organization, one neighbor, 100 people, whoever that is, and say, yeah, there have been some bad instances in policing, and not shy away from that, and let them know. I think for them to feel comfortable that their chief of police does not stand for that, and will hold those accountable that don't uphold those moral values and virtues. I think that's important, number one. And we're always talking about the community expectations on, here's a quick little story. We had a large event, and we didn't know, was there going to be 5,000 or 50,000 people showing up? It was a new thing. It was connecting our new bridge and a lot of different stuff. And so I really staffed up the police presence downtown. And my goal is that this community eventually, when they see police, sheriff's offices, at this point, I had roving SWAT patrols in this area. And it was based on things that were going on in Minneapolis, based on things that were going up on line 3 in our community. And eventually people saw them engaging. They weren't hiding behind a corner. They were out engaging. I mean, men and women in full tactical gear, ready for any instance, but they were engaging in the community. And, one lady said, Chief, why do we need these guys with big guns? I said, well, we don't need them right now, but if you need them, you're going to want them here. And I said, she says, do we need them here right now? And I gave her an example. I said, well, if you think back to Jason Aldean concert in Las Vegas, they didn't need them until they did. And if I send these individuals home, I can still call them back in, and they'll end up being here, 45 minutes later. And so we had a great discussion why that is. And I said, our goal is to protect you and your little ones that are sitting here. And at the end of the conversation, and I'm thankful she brought it up, because the absence of complaints to me isn't things are going perfect. The absence of complaints is a community that doesn't care enough about what you're doing and how your organization is running. And so managing our police presence, I think, is the only way I can do this, to be out there and having that conversation about what we're here doing. Now, we're talking about the community and managing those expectations, but if I'm not managing our troops and what the chiefs previously talked about, how they're handling victims of crime, how they're handling complainants, how they're investigating what they might view as small cases, and if they're not taking that to the nth degree, that's a problem as well. And the community and I can be on the same page, but if I haven't elevated and trained and supported and equipped and staffed our organization to meet those needs, man, that's never gonna happen. And so that's a challenge too, is in our community. It was old school Stillwater for a lot of years, and the people at the events in downtown, might have been townies, everyone wore a pony leather jacket at one point. That's not the case today. And so the tough part is, I think, I just go back to what Terry said, is being honest with the community about our limitations, about our challenges, whether it be financial, whether it be staffing, whether it be just being open about how we handle and investigate a case is the best thing to do. And so that's kind of been, in my early tenure here, is just being out and about talking and kind of just combining, what the chiefs talked about. It's
cool to listen to you describe how you're leading in a community that is rapidly evolving, that has got just such a strong history. And I love, Chief, just hearing about the two aspects you brought up, the accountability, the honesty, as well as the absence of complaints, not really reflecting that you're doing a great job. It all leads up to everything that all of you are talking about, and that is being present and being open and honest and having those conversations. I mean, it ties directly into why we're having these conversations today. So really,
and for us to understand, us chiefs in general, I think it's really, for me, my biggest learning curve is understanding this community and learning. I mean, like I said, lived here for 25 years and grew up here, but through the lens of a police chief is a little bit different. And a silly little story is we have to know who we can call on, and I can call on all these chiefs, the two chiefs here, and ask them any question. And in general policing philosophy, it'll be super relevant and it can be super helpful, but finding like communities and what those expectations are. So we have buskers downtown, people playing guitar with the guitar case out, and some of the communities like, oh my gosh, do they have a permit and whatever. And I'm trying to find communities, maybe Chief Tuscan up in Duluth and Canal Park might be one, but trying to find a community that has those here. And I talked to a chief down in Fort Myers, and he says, Brian, the absence of buskers in my community on the boardwalks is what concerns me. Because if someone isn't comfortable enough opening up a guitar case and letting people throw money in there, they don't feel safe enough to do that, there's a problem in my community, and I want to know what element is there. And so I've been able to take that and educate our downtown businesses and our business community and our chamber on what that is. And so that to me was just a luck of the draw, kind of reaching out to different communities. So that's the biggest thing, is leaders in law enforcement. We have to know who we can go to and who we can rely on for good information.
Yeah, great story. Yeah, thank you. Let's shift over to the third and final question. Chief Stier, can you talk about the tools and methods that you're using and finding successful in identifying priorities and identifying resident expectations?
Sure. So, pre-George Floyd, we were not SWAT trained. We didn't have all these 40mm launchers. We didn't have community meetings. And then post-George Floyd, after the incident, I went to the council and I said, look, we need to have our officers trained. They need to have SWAT gear. They need to have 40mm launchers. We need to have all these things just in case, to touch on what Chief Brian said. It's having the resources available if you need them, and having the SWAT teams doing roving patrols. I mean, they're there, and I think the community has become numb to this. I think this is just normal. And what I've done is created a quick response team. I didn't call it SWAT because we don't want to do that. I said quick response team. The council loves it. The community loves it. And during Halloween, for example, we do we block off the downtown area, put all our fire trucks out there and all our squad cars. And I had one of the officers dress up in quick response team gear, which is essentially a SWAT gear, and one in mobile field force gear. And the kids were able to come up and interact with the SWAT guy and get a picture with the SWAT guy. And this was the coolest thing ever. And then I would talk to parents about, you really have that gear? And I say, we do. If we need it, it's there. The officers have it in their car. So if it's a mobile field force situation, they're going to wear this gear. If it's a SWAT call out, they're going to wear this gear. Every officer is trained in it. We all have it. It's really expensive, but if we need it, it's there. So that's kind of the community of, okay, our police department is trained. They know what they're doing. And everybody that comes on goes through training. And I've thrown a ton of money at training. So it's, the community knows that it's, I'm trying to think of the training. We went to critical incidents, CIT training. All the officers went through the max amount of training they could possibly get. And when I go to council and ask for more money, I have to have this training. The officers have to be trained. They have to know what's going on. They need to be able to handle a mental health crisis. And that's, the community sees it. I've expressed it in council meetings. I've expressed it to the, around the coffee club on Tuesday mornings. It's, look, this costs a lot of money, but I have to put the money into this So the officers are trained and they can handle these situations. So the tools that we're doing now and using is mobile field force, quick response team, but I'm also turning that out there. This is what our gear looks like. This is what a 40 millimeter looks like. You know, this is not a shotgun. This has a pepper ball. This has a marking round. This is what this is. This is what they know what it is. And it's explaining that, yeah, this will hurt if you get hit with this. Just, you know, obey the orders from the officer that's telling you to do something. But one of the biggest fears was, what happens if we have an officer involved shooting here? What is your plan? And I laid out the plan. This is my plan. We're going to protect infrastructure. We're going to protect the residents. We're going to call for backup. We're going to have all these things that Minneapolis had. It's going to come here. It's going to look ugly, but I'm going to be here. I'm going to explain everything that happens along the way. So that was one thing, is teaching our city council and the mayor, this is what's going to happen. If we do this, if this happens, we're going to do this. And then putting articles in the paper of, we hope it never happens here, but if it does, this is what we're going to do. So again, being open and honest and saying, this is what we're doing. We're trained for it. We're ready for it. We hope it never happens. We really hope we never have to use any of this equipment, but if we have to, we know how to use it. So the methods that we're doing, extra patrols in neighborhoods if we have burglaries, I mean, that's just normal policing. I put an extra car on, no problem. 10-hour shift. Your job is to drive this neighborhood, get out on foot, talk to people at night. That's how you solve crimes. That's how you make the community know you're there. It costs me 10 hours of overtime, but it's money well spent, in my opinion. So it's when there's a problem, I'll throw officers at it. I'll throw money at it until everything calms down. So, and it's working for us.
Yeah, that's great, Chief. Do you have a system in place for being able to share with your residents how well you're doing as a department, kind of a performance measurement tracking program?
No, we don't. Every council meeting I have to do they have a police department. It's kind of an overshot of what happened over the month.
Yep.
So I explain the clearance rate, the number of calls that we had, and any major incidents that we have through that month. And we've just started to release all of our police contacts and ICRs on our Facebook page. So our local paper used to put in whatever they felt like putting in, you know, a cat in the tree, and they went to 6 lockouts and that's all they did. And I finally said enough is enough. And we put out our full list of everything that happened over that week. And the comments were, oh my God, you guys are busy. And it's like, no, this is a normal week, you know, and stuff that didn't make it in the paper now is on Facebook. So that's the only way that I really can get out there is Facebook, a message. We do have another alert system that I can do for bad weather, tornado watches and warnings. I do page that out, but.
Yeah, well, sharing that information is really important to help people just understand how busy you are and what are the work activities and what are the type of activities, so that a little bit of a backdrop to hopefully never having to, but pulling out the heavier gear that you have. So thank you. Chief Mueller, can you talk about the tools and methods that you're using for understanding resident expectations and priorities regarding local police services in Stillwater?
Yeah, broken record. I keep going back to being in the community and having those conversations and talking with people. Transparency kind of became a 4-letter word, I feel like, in our profession, because it always just meant we need to talk about the bad things within our department. But Chief Stier just did a great example of transparency. Too long, we've, as a profession, have hid the tools that we have and the techniques that we have, and no one needs to know, and it's our secret. And just being out and about and letting people know what challenges we face, that we might face an active shooter. We might face a large crowd that wants to hurt and burn buildings and do things like that. And so here are the tools and how our money is spent. So transparency to me is just absolutely critical in having those conversations. We are just kind of embarking on a sort of performance management, performance measures journey here in Stillwater. We actually just had our first meeting yesterday, is where I kind of came up with the conversation, because we were talking about this as in building or public works, and what would be a great, if we're talking about building codes violations or something like, what would be the outcome? And they said no complaints. I was like, well, wait a minute, that's community apathy, not having complaints. I want people to call me if they have concerns, again, that means they care, and that gives me the opportunity to solve something. So I'm hopeful that I know we use POCO on a regular basis in terms of tapping the community. And so, we're hopeful to get more involved in that, identifying some of our projects. And with that, just quite frankly, is looking at our staffing and how our organization is run. Our organization has been run the same way. This is how we've always done it, and that's been awesome. And so we're going to embark on a operational study of the police department at the beginning of the year, hopefully to be done prior to 2023 budget discussions, to really look at how our organization is run and how we respond to these. So data mining internally, looking at different performance measures and how, what that means for staffing and our response, where the crime is, what the crime is, and then engaging the community and seeing where those things match up is where starting in 2022, I'm hopeful to have another command staff added to our organization to help manage that, sort of an administrative commander, because in a small organization, everyone's working and doing different things. So that's where we're at in terms of, and just lastly, I guess, is the mindset here, because we've always done it that way, is changing internally to allow people to be creative. And so the conversations that I have with the community, I'm also trying to have with our officers. One is because I'm the new guy and I just need to meet my officers and know what makes them tick and know what they want in their career. But also I have any change we've done, other than absent maybe one, has come internally from, hey chief, I've been wanting to do this. Hey, I have an idea, and I'm not smart enough to be the guy with all the answers in this organization. And so how allowing and supporting our troops to be creative and to bring ideas up front, and they're the ones that are out on the street every day and they hear from the community, and that's where I'm hopeful that we can make some great change.
I think that's great. I'm just really excited for the city of Stillwater under your leadership and for all the things that you're doing in the community. It's all super stuff. So congratulations on the work that you're doing, and good luck with the operational study moving forward. It's just really positive signs.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Chief Sayles, can you share with us what tools and methods you find successful for understanding resident expectations and priorities, and how you track your department's performance?
One of the biggest thing is I'll go back to our courageous conversations, having that face-to-face, we're right here, we're in this moment, talk. I can sense their feelings, I can get their emotions, instead of through the surveys that we will do. We'll still have our community, our courageous communities conversations, but I love being out where I can touch a person, talk to a person, and feel that energy off of them. And we can work towards building a better Beloit, that one Beloit, ensuring that we are fair and impartial in our policing. And that goes into those four things with the procedural justice, embracing the community policing, and actually talking about what's the next step past community policing. I think one thing that may not have been talked about a lot is we as American citizens are completing a 20-year war, right? So we're going to have lots of men and women coming back from a foreign soil that needs to be integrated back into society. What are we going to do for those individuals? Are we going to create opportunities for them to work in policing because you have that team atmosphere that they've been a part of for 20 years? But do we force them and push them right out to patrol? No, we need to make sure that we're integrating them slowly back into policing, understanding that the rules of engagement are different that they had over in Afghanistan, and bringing them along slowly. Very too often we see some of our homeless population that are our veterans, and we're not doing too much for them. So what are we doing as a community? What are we doing as a police department? And what are we doing as a county to help these individuals acclimate back to the way that we are built as American citizens? So those are some of the things that I like to have those conversations about. How are we track that? It's the positive contacts that we do have. We just can't always track the positive contacts, but track those negative contacts. Where did we go wrong? If we have to open up an internal investigation, did we truly investigate that internal investigation whole Did we leave things out? Did we question a person that may have been doing something that goes against our policies? There's agencies that's gotten themselves in trouble by not fully investigating those things. By no means do I want to investigate a police officer and unfortunately them lose their job, but we have to be able to investigate that the way we investigate crimes of our community members. So it's having that using technology. One of the great things here in Beloit that we're right across the street, basically from Illinois. So I have a lot of peers that live in Illinois, and they have great camera systems, real life crime centers in their agencies. So we're starting to go towards that a little bit, because if you have 350 cameras in your city, that's 350 extra set of eyes that's going to help us. So we've been implementing that at some of our major intersections that we know where drug trafficking occurs, and we're able to use the Alper cameras to catch those license plates, and it makes it easier for us to have that probable cause to make those traffic stops. So we're getting those complaints of the car always comes here at noon. They sit outside for 30 seconds, and if somebody comes out, they reach in the car and they reach out and they take off. It removes our citizens from being witnesses and having to testify to us saying, yep, we caught this on camera. We seen this. Here's everything we have. And we're advancing towards that. I think over the next couple of years with the cameras that we're putting in place now, the citizens are going to be very appreciative of that. But on the same side, they're going to say, well, why does Big Brother have to have an eye on me? And it's us getting out in front of them and explaining that we're only using these cameras for critical incidents, that hit and run where your loved one was struck and they sustained significant injury. We know who the suspect car is, instead of us chasing in our own tail. We're not using this to know where you're going all the time. We're using it to help our investigative tactics and our skills to make a better and safer Beloit. So it's been out, talk about the technology. And one of the big things is actually talking about how we're creating officer wellness and safety within our departments, and explaining to them that our police officers see some of the worst things on a day in and day out basis, and explaining how we're helping them deal with that. Because even though we deal with people at their worst day, our cops have to deal with that multiple times throughout the day. So talking about how we created our peer support program, how we upped our mentoring at the police department to make sure we all have that common knowledge, and being transparent about that. We're not saying that our police officers are, the negative, the cynical way, or the stereotype, oh, they got to go see a therapist if something's wrong with them. No, we're going to have a professional talk to them, so therefore they can express some of the things that they may see through their 1, 5, 10, 20 plus year career. How do you deal with that? One thing that we're going to implement here when we finish our strategic plan is a 2, 10, and 20 program. Within the first 2 years, our police officer is going to have to receive minimum 4 hours of financial training and then 4 hours of mental health training. At the 10-year mark, do a full evaluation of them mentally, physically, see where they're at. What are you thinking? How are you doing? What can we do better for you? And then at that 20-year mark, do a retool. Go through all of that again. 20 years, some people are ready to retire, and some are getting close. Are you financially set to be able to retire? Are you mentally able to pull yourself away from the police department? We see it a lot where when people get ready to retire, there's little cynical jokes and things that come out. And it was like, okay, are you ready to go back to society? And making sure we're doing that with the hopes of having those mental health checks yearly. Start off slowly, because we have to start off slow. We can't drink from the fire hydrant, but start off slowly and then implement getting those mental health checks in yearly, because we see some things that people would probably curl up in the grave if they have to deal with it on a daily basis.
Chief, just hearing about that program, that's a great program. I'm really glad you brought up the kind of the wellness issue and the health of your office. What wonderful focus. The other thing that really takes me on that response is the proactive nature that you're taking to the department. I love you thinking beyond what community policing is. You're the first panelist that has talked about the integration of veterans, which I really appreciate, because you're absolutely right. That is going to be impacting communities coming forward. So congratulations on that forward thinking. And now I'm getting a better sense for why Beloit is changing and moving forward. So congratulations on all that.
Thank you. I think the biggest thing that makes me think about that is I do have a 22-year-old son that serves in the Air Force, and he still got 16 years left. But it's like, okay, how can I help him as a father? Not as a chief Sayles, but how can I help him as a father? Some of the things that he's seen, some of the things that he's been subject to. He's currently in Qatar now, waiting to get back home in the next 2 weeks. But how can I help him? And then bring in my community to say, hey, we have this person that's going to have a fragile mind coming back from seeing some things that we can't fathom. How do we help them? How do we give them jobs? How do we put jobs on the side for them to help them reintegrate with our community? So it's my father brain working, then also as a police officer brain working of, we got some people that's coming back that's going to need us to rally behind them as they rally to keep us safe in our country and on our soil.
Well, it makes sense because the parallel nature of the command structure and the work that's being done, and what's going on in the law enforcement profession right now. It makes sense to be thinking about how can you take advantage of those skills that have been developed through the military. So yeah, great stuff. Thank you so much. We're at the end of our questions, but I would open it up to all three of you. If there's anything else that you want to identify or bring up or ask each other on anything that any of you have shared before we wrap this up.
I just wanted to jump in. I know Terry had mentioned going down to Minneapolis and some of the things that people say in the race baiting and stuff like that. As everybody can see, obviously my skin tone's a little bit different than everybody else's, and it's been very tough for marginalized communities and minorities to get in law enforcement. But at the same time, though, it's up to our community to understand that the 99% of us are not out blatantly being racist police officers. It's not always a thing of where we're pulling you over because you may not look like the population that you're driving through. It's a situation of safety. Things happen in the dark that you don't know about, and it's unfortunate that we have to stop you. I go back to one of my peers when I was a lieutenant. He's since retired. I remember a guy claimed that he was being racist for pulling him over, and he looked at the guy. He was like, "Man, I didn't pull you over because you're race. I couldn't even see you. It's 2:00 in the morning." He's like, no, you pulled me over because I was black. He said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. He was transported to the jail. He said, there's a car coming up right now. You tell me what color that person was when we pass him. And they passed the car, and he said, what color was it? He said, I don't know. He said, well, how can you say that I pulled you over because you're black? He said, because if that person was black, you would have pulled him over. So it's it's having those conversations and talking to them and understanding that, when we pass you, we're not looking at the race. We're looking at what violation you violated as a traffic offense. And maybe we getting out to educate you on, hey, it's 20 miles per hour over here. It's a school zone. There's kids that don't pay attention. We have the AirPods, the headphones to cover the ears, and kids are oblivious to the world. And maybe they're walking out in the middle of the road and you just don't see it, and they didn't see you. So it's our community trusting in us and understanding that 99% of us are doing it for the right reason. And we're just here to truly help you, and don't try to make everything about race, because I can almost guarantee, and I can only say for Beloit, that I know our police officers not operating in an explicit bias manner. It's the implicit biases that we all have as just general people.
Yeah, that's very well said. Thanks for sharing that. Let's wrap this up. Thanks so much for all of the comments and perspectives and just things that you shared about what it means to be a leader in law enforcement and the ways that you're connecting with your residents. A couple of things that I wrote down that I just want to kind of recite back. This whole issue of procedural justice and how do you get to doing 21st century policing, I think is a really important thing. All of you are implementing, because you're all relatively new in your positions, cultural shifts in your organizations to kind of recognize that you need to engage with people in a different way. The ways that you engage even pre-pandemic or pre-George Floyd is going to be different because the priorities and needs and expectations have shifted, as demonstrated in the research that I shared. I love the fact that you've humanized the profession of law enforcement, their residents, and working with residents on trying to create public safety. Lots of emphasis around honesty and accountability and transparency. Thanks, Brian, for sharing the absence of complaints. I think that one of the reasons why I think these conversations are so critical is that absence of complaints simply means that people have not found the convenient way to engage, because I know that people are interested in their communities. It's really a matter of how do you do it in a meaningful way that's going to be applicable to all segments of your community. If you don't know much about your local government, you're not going to be complaining, because you're just going to be kind of getting into that apathetic mode, and kind of discounting what's going on in the community and discounting your role as a citizen. So I love hearing about the proactive nature that all of you are taking in your departments on recognizing the importance of accountability and transparency, and exploring new ways to accomplish that. So there was just a ton of great stuff in this conversation. I really appreciate all of you sharing. I will send you contact information for each other, so you can connect on just offline with anything that you're interested in learning more about. I do these conversations every Tuesday. And so if any of you are aware of anybody that you think would be good at this panel and interested in participating, by all means, send them my way, and we will find a way to get them scheduled. You'll start seeing these highlight segments probably within a week or so on LinkedIn, and I'll make sure that we're connecting to make sure that you see them. And the thing that we ask is that there's a ton of people in your profession that are looking to you with respect for the work that you're doing. And so share it with them so that they can benefit from your perspectives and ideas. It's a really valuable part of why we are doing these conversations. I'll catch up with you probably within a week, and I'd love to get some feedback on this panel. What kind of experience was it for you? What do you think I should do differently? How can I make it better? The greatest part for me is I get to meet cool guys every week, and doing great stuff on behalf of the community. And today was no exception. So I really appreciate the time that you spent. And I know we went a little bit over our designated hour, but hopefully you found it worthwhile. I certainly did. So thank you for your time, and best of luck with everything that you're doing.